Hello everyone, welcome back to the Recovery Channel. We have a lot to cover this week, so we're going to jump right in. Last week we talked about a daily routine that includes several aspects of the ABC Please model. We're basically going to set ourselves up with a daily routine that will increase our self-esteem and ensure that we're treating ourselves well. This week, we're going to wrap that up and talk about doing things that are in alignment with our values. Then, we're going to discuss something called biosocial theory and how that relates to addiction and recovery. Okay, so where we left off was that we're going to create a weekly chart of easy tasks that we're going to do every day in order to build self-esteem and start taking better care of ourselves emotionally and physically. The last piece of the weekly plan is to do things that are in alignment with our values. The positive emotions we stack up with our values in mind are longer term and longer lasting. The reason for this is that when we do things that are in alignment with our values, it creates a more harmonious life for us internally. And when the successes we're stacking up by following this plan are also moving us toward a longer term goal, we get the added benefit of feeling productive and that our life is moving in a positive direction. But how do I know what my values are? There's a school of thought that says whatever we do in life, whatever we go after, that is what we value. Makes sense, right? We're going to pursue those things that we find to be valuable. But for me, this theory doesn't hold for addicts. My addiction causes me to go after things that I know are not good for me, things that are ruining my life. I don't go after my addiction because I value it. I go after it because I'm addicted to it. I feel like I don't have a choice. So I think for addicts, we need to think about the things we want to go after, the things that our hearts desire, but we haven't been able to pursue because we have a disease. Many of us are so steeped in our addiction that we have a hard time even knowing what our values are. So here's what we're going to do. Check the comment section or your workbook for a list of values that we've put together for you. These come out of the DBT workbook as well as some other sources. Take a look at the list and pick 2 or 3 that really resonate with you. When you look at the values, they're a stirring in your heart. And please don't judge yourself if your values sound shallow or materialistic. It's okay to value success, to want to be well known, to have a killer body. Your values are personal to you and no one else even needs to know about them. So feel free to pick ones that feel good to you without worrying about what others might think. Once you've chosen your values, pick one that you'd like to work on first. Then, for that value, think about a goal you can set for yourself that is in alignment with it. A goal that will move you closer to living out that value. Our examples provide some help with this. Now, for your weekly plan, think of one small thing you can do that will get you closer to achieving the goal. So let's say your value is that you want to help people that are less fortunate than you. Your goal can be that you're going to spend time volunteering at the local homeless shelter. Your task for the week then could be to do an internet search for local homeless shelters and get the contact information. The following week, your task could be to call at least one of those shelters to get more information. You keep doing this week after week, and before you know it, you're achieving not just your tasks, but also your goals. That's it. So your homework for this week is to pick 2 to 3 values that you want to work on. Then, choose one of those values and set a goal toward it. On your weekly task chart, write down an activity that will move you one small step closer to achieving your goal. And with that, we are actively working ABC Please to build our self-esteem, take better care of ourselves, and start living a life of purpose that we can be proud of. Sign me up for that. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is called biosocial theory. There's a bunch of psychobabble I could try to impress you with to explain it, but instead, let me break it down into simple terms that even I can understand. What biosocial theory comes down to is that we are born with a certain level of sensitivity in our emotions. Some people will experience very intense emotions and have a stronger reaction, while others don't feel their emotions as deeply and can ride them out more easily. You can think of it like our skin. Some people have very sensitive skin and will get sunburn within a few minutes of being outside, while for others it would take a few hours. There's nothing we can do about it, it's just the way we're built. The second part of the theory addresses the environment in which we were brought up. If we grow up in an environment that is emotionally invalidating, and we are consistently taught that our sensitivity is somehow wrong or unwelcome, we become what is referred to as emotionally dysregulated. Think about our friend with the sensitive skin. If they grow up in a house where everyone understands that they have sensitive skin and they keep them inside or lather them up with sunscreen before they go out, their sensitivity never really becomes a problem. But imagine if that person's sensitivity is ignored and they are told to go outside every day without sunscreen. That's the equivalent of being invalidated. So, we have two factors involved with biosocial theory. There's the way we were born, and then there's the environment in which we develop. In psychology, they like to call this nature versus nurture. Are we the way we are because we were born that way, or did something happen along the way that made us that way? Biosocial theory says it's both. If you are naturally sensitive, nature, and you grow up in an environment that doesn't accept and validate your sensitivity, nurture, you will have trouble figuring out how to deal with your emotions. This one really hits home for me, which is probably why I wanted to talk to you all about it. I am a super sensitive person, always have been. I was just born that way. You may have picked up on that given that I get choked up about every other video. Now, my parents were from Europe and grew up during World War II. My mom was in a concentration camp for 4 years as a kid. My dad didn't have it much better. They were extremely stoic and saw any sign of emotion, especially crying, as weakness, and it was to be avoided at all costs. So you can imagine me, as this super sensitive kid, constantly being told to stop crying, to not show emotion. This emotionally invalidating and shaming environment caused me a lot of emotional dysregulation. I'm going to talk about emotional dysregulation and what it looks like in a minute, but first I want to talk about other things that cause it, whether or not we are emotionally sensitive. Childhood neglect, traumatic events, and head injuries can be a cause. Another one is lack of co-regulation. As babies and in our early years of development, we have limited mental capacity to self-regulate our emotions. Our brains just haven't developed that ability yet. A baby that is uncomfortable will cry desperately. A toddler that is told no will fly into a fit of rage. These are raw, intense emotions, and the young brain has trouble dealing with them. This is where co-regulation comes in. The baby's parent or caregiver helps the baby calm down by comforting them, assuring them that everything's going to be okay. Or the toddler by validating their anger but calmly reinforcing a boundary. This co-regulation trains that young mind that strong emotions are okay, but there is a healthy way to get through them. Now, contrast that with a baby that is crying because it's uncomfortable, but the parent just closes the door and lets the baby continue to cry. Or the toddler having a tantrum that gets screamed at, threatened, or spanked for being angry. The intensity of the child's emotions are stoked to a frenzy or beaten down with pain or shame. If that is done consistently, these kids don't learn how to deal with their emotions in healthy ways, and it follows them into their later life. One last important note here, and then I'll talk about emotional dysregulation in adulthood. As DBT likes to put it, this is a no-blame model. It's not the person's fault that they are sensitive or were treated a certain way growing up, and it's not the caregiver's fault that they didn't co-regulate properly. It is not helpful to look for someone to blame. It's more important to identify the issue, accept that it exists, and then try to do something about it. So, what does emotional dysregulation look like in adulthood? It's basically overreacting to things with inappropriately high levels of anger, fear, or sadness, or other emotions. It's emotions that are overly intense for the given situation, or last a lot longer than they would for the average person. Where a healthy person might be irritated by an argument and feel mild anger and resentment toward the person for an hour or so, an emotionally dysregulated person might fly into a rage or be seething with anger for days. Where a healthy person might feel some anxiety about taking a driving test and need to calm themselves down a bit, a dysregulated person will wring their hands for days on end, losing sleep and be totally stressed out about it. Other signs are deep depression for extended periods, high levels of shame, self-harm, high-risk sexual behaviors, extreme perfectionism, a lot of conflict in relationships, suicidal thoughts, and yes, substance abuse or process addiction. That's why we're talking about it here. If you're one of those people that feels their feelings more strongly than others, and you have trouble calming down or pulling yourself out of a funk, please know you are not alone. A lot of people suffer from emotional dysregulation to varying degrees. And also know that it's not your fault. You are not broken. Finally, and this is the good news, there is help for you. And do you know what the most common treatment is for emotional dysregulation? You guessed it, DBT. That's why we made it a point to make DBT a part of these recovery videos. And even if you don't suffer from emotional dysregulation, just about everyone could use some help with controlling their emotions, especially addicts. We only touch on the concepts of DBT in these videos and provide a few of the tools. I really encourage you to look deeper into it and find a formal class for it in your area. It's typically offered by mental health clinics or therapy offices where it's an organization rather than just individual therapists. Next week, I'm going to talk about the DBT concept of wise mind and also provide you with one of the tools used for emotional regulation. The tool involves using your mindfulness skills, which I know you've been practicing, to identify when you're having a strong emotion. Then we assess the emotion to figure out if it's appropriate and at the appropriate intensity level for the given situation. Then we make a decision as to what we want to do with the emotion. Run with it, or use one of our tools to get through the situation without overreacting to the emotion. Intriguing, yes? I look forward to wrapping up Step 7 with you with these valuable tools. Until then, stay sober, one day at a time, and take good care of yourself. We'll see you next week.